Thank you both so much for being here. I know it's been busy COP for you both, but this is not your first rodeo, so you know you're used to this. I just wanted to start with the fact that, from my perspective, since I was at the blue zone and the green zone the past few days, it feels like a different COP to me. And I wanted to know from both of your perspectives, because you've been to a few now, from the activism movement. I mean, how does it feel for you, Joice? Do you maybe want to start?
Yeah, obviously, like I think, well, sorry. Hello, everybody. Ayisha pa, che Reda, hi, Joice, che Aime, Paraguay po, wa Brazil po. So I'm Joice Mendez, and I'm very excited to be here. And yeah, I think it's been massive. Obviously, we know about this. Representativity has increased in many ways. And also, I think that every time, this is my 5th COP, I feel that also not as a youth person, but also as a professional in the energy, water, and food nexus. I think, like, obviously conversations are being more critical, and like people are also more aware about like really what are the targets, you know, where do we have to get at. Unfortunately, some governments, especially some of my countries, they haven't been kind of that aware about the limit, the 1.5. So I'm a little bit still concerned, yeah.
What about you, Ayisha?
Good afternoon, everybody. I feel like the energy in the room is a little down.
Let's bring it up.
Yeah, let's bring it up. I am called Ayisha Siddiqa. I come from the Mochiwala tribe in Pakistan. And to your question on activism at this COP, I don't think it's any different than under the UNFCCC convention. At the UNFCCC convention, one is not allowed to call nation states out. One is not allowed to gather in large numbers. I think the kind of narrowing on the Middle East as a question of how this COP is different, same could be said if this COP was in the United States or if it was in Glasgow, which protest was not permitted either. So I think the question actually isn't on civil society engagement, but rather what are the parties doing? Because the COP fundamentally is about governments coming together to solve the issue of climate change, and I think that is where Joice and I's expertise lie.
So what then have you made of the progress in some people's mind that we've seen in the first few days of this COP? I mean, are you seeing sort of the discussions and you know the policy negotiations and decisions sort of where you hope it would be?
No.
Oh.
The answer is no. For many reasons. I think we applauded the first day way too much. The Loss and Damage Fund was established. I think it's good that it was established, but a country like the United States put $15 million into that fund. The total amount of monies, I think, in the Loss and Damage Fund is now $500 million. That is the total salary of 6 Saudi football players. And that is absolutely ridiculous, I think. I'm from Pakistan. Last year, my country experienced floods of no kind. 60 million people were displaced. If the US were to give that $15 million to those 60 million, each person would receive a quarter. That is nothing, especially for countries that are disproportionately responsible for the climate crisis. And then more on climate finance, I think we are seeing a lot of commitments, not just on loss and damage, but generally on the Green Climate Fund. And these commitments are lovely words, but they seldom make it to the pot. So I'm a bit concerned about that.
Yeah. Joice, jump in, because you know, I heard someone yesterday telling me that all of the flood of pledges and initiatives and announcements that we've been hearing has made it difficult for some activists to be able to get through the noise. I mean, is that how it's been for you? Do you feel like there are a lot of words, as Ayisha was saying, and not enough actual action?
Yeah, and I also believe that, yeah, I agree completely as well with what Ayisha said. We were actually discussing that with Secretary General about like, when you put that money into perspective, especially when you're talking about as well disaster relief, right? That is not like significantly enough. And I'm also like worried, especially, so where I live is in Paraguay, and it's a country that is, I mean, we're expecting not to have winter soon. I mean, this year we reached 40 Celsius plus during winter. And actually we're experimenting migration, and also, you know, what I see is a different reality as well from what as well my government's coming to say here as well, pledging, and also having this perspective of we are an environmental, you know, powerhouse on what really I live on my daily life. So it also, I think the question will be back on what you mean, what is activism, right? Because activism has like several perspectives, several ways of acting. For example, we do not, we do not protest, or we probably, it's not that we can, but it's not well seen, otherwise they'll close the doors for us. So we have to learn to do policy making, public policies, engage civil society in different ways. So if you mean activism will be like protesting or, you know, organizing, I think Ayisha has the expertise in that way. Unfortunately, we have to learn to be in decision-making places, because it's not, even if you say activism is like a tattoo and people are like afraid. Sometimes like in English you have creative words like advocate and some others, but in Spanish like advocate will be abogado and like everybody gets confused. So it's been a funny thing because it's like, okay, you're a professional in the area, you work advising, but at the same time you're a person, you're a young person, you're gonna be back into that reality, and I also had to bring something back to my community as well, like tangible. We know this pledge is there, but how that will translate on my community.
Exactly. So then what is proving to be effective then when you're at COP, when you're, you know, there's a number of negotiators from a number of public sector, private sector, of course, right, oil and gas companies. So what is effective from your perspective? What is actually working?
Like
from the activist community?
Well, I think that one is like people are very aware that we just cannot wait like on that money. Like it's exactly youth. I mean, we see that money, that commitment, but youth and indigenous peoples or other vulnerable communities aren't included into the climate architecture. I mean, we see, for example, I work with electrification projects in the Peruvian Amazon, and it's like for us to apply, even sometimes for a grant, it's a bunch of crazy requirements, and like we don't see as well that distribution. So our reality is like, okay, those negotiations are taking place, but also how we can manage to create partnerships and alliances, you know, during COP. So people, young people, we don't come here just, you know, take pictures and all of that. No. Action, you know, like we have a heavy responsibility on really making tangible actions back home. Yeah.
Would you agree with that, Ayisha?
You asked what is working.
Yeah, what's effective?
In the negotiations, actually, one country vetoing something that is working makes the policy go null. So what isn't working is for the past 3 days, we've had really robust conversations on the global stocktake. We've had really robust conversation on the NDCs, but they haven't been formalized. And I think leadership, where I would applaud leadership, is probably the states of Vanuatu, Tuvalu, Tonga, Colombia, and a few countries that are experiencing the climate crisis as a human rights issue. Leadership is working as the Pacific Islands are asking the International Court of Justice to connect climate change to human rights. Leadership is working as Colombia is signing on to the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty. Leadership is working as the AOSIS and G77 countries are demanding the implementation of a loss and damage fund. Where it is really, really halted is where countries like the United States, like the UAE, like big emitting nations are halting progress.
Well, where are they halting the most progress, would you say?
Fossil fuel phase out.
The text in particular, is that what?
The text in particular, and also the energy conversation. We don't have an energy agenda at this COP, which is really a big paradox. And simultaneously, this is the biggest COP in terms of attendance that has ever occurred. It's 70,000 people, 140,000 people registered to be in the blue zone, 300,000 people registered to be in the green zone. And although we have a civil society attendance, I think more attendance of media and the private sector that I've ever seen. What is actually at the heart of this is party negotiations. Can you remind me what you asked in particular?
No, I was saying, because you were talking about fossil fuels and the text, that is where the holdup is.
Yeah, the fossil fuel industry is heavily, heavily involved in this COP.
How do you both navigate that then? I mean, you just really outlined, you painted a good picture for what this is. 300,000 people registered for the green zone, the blue zone, 100,000. You said there's a ton of media, there's a number of companies. How do you navigate what you are trying to do, the message you are trying to convey then on the ground?
On the ground back home?
Here.
Here. It's bringing the attention back to actually the outcomes of the COP. It's bringing attention back to nationally determined contributions. At Paris, countries agreed that they would put in place mechanisms to decarbonize by 2023 and then 2025. The global stocktake, it's basically a health test. It's a full body health test that you go to the doctor for, and he tells you your heart's failing, your kidney's failing, you have an appendix problem, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna cut out this, cut out that, and I'm gonna make myself healthy. So it's proper health check. What we're seeing is our health is still horribly bad. And the NDC is where our plan, national contributed distributions those were our plans to get back to health. And the thing is, after the global stocktake is done, there is no mechanism to ensure that there is accountability. And we need accountability, so that is what attention needs to be brought back to. You can acknowledge that you have a health issue. You can say you need to take medicines, but if you don't take them, you don't take them.
How does that affect then your day in, day out? I mean, Joice, maybe give us some insight into what the next few days look like for you and what the past few days have looked like.
Yeah, so basically, I think as well, as I feel as well that pressure of, bringing tangible solutions again, I have got as well opportunity to, bring youth as well from different community financing and other kind of ways as well, opportunities. So we have kind of different agendas. I mean, I have created several grassroots organizations in Brazil, in Paraguay as well, and contribute with several ones in Latin America. So what we do as well is, COP is as well a platform to highlight certain realities that, they're never mentioned. So for example, when you think Brazil, everybody's like the Amazon, and that's it. There is no more forest. Well, we're in the border, we have, with Argentina and Bolivia, we have the Pantanal forest, and it's been burning a lot the last days. 6 million mammals have been killed in the last week. Nothing in the news, or, even we say like, okay, I lost a colleague. He was born alive, fighting, against the fire. And then, using as well spaces and meetings, like providing, here it is, let's create a Pantanal fund, like advocating with the Brazilian government. One of my colleagues is 18 years old and he works in the Brazilian parliament, trying to mobilize. So when they think, like youth is like, we put you here, kind of the activism, no, like we are qualifying a lot of the activism because we're gonna be back there. So it's highlighting these realities, but also again, doing alliances, among youth projects, talking as well with ministers, like, hey, this is the reality. Even though sometimes they get uncomfortable, they want to avoid us. They're like, oh, they got too much, information, or like they are listening to it, or like the secretary. Sometimes, we have seen in some cases that even the access, accreditation, for indigenous peoples, or like, activists is like, no, we cannot get party overflows in some, like cases, and because there is like a brand, it's like, this is a huge vitrine and everybody wants to sell as well the best, in the country, but hey, we are here to work with you. Like, we are occupying these places. It's our country. We love where we are from, so allow us as well, and not put that much resistance, because at the end of the day, again, we are in this reality, and those commitments won't be sustainable over time if we are not being trained, included, and especially in Latin America, we are tackling a lot of things: poverty, unemployment, and again, climate justice. And we say activism will not be, like effective if we are not really moving the roots, the critical roots of, the transition, a paradigmatic transition.
So it's giving a lot of these negotiators the reality on the ground, the reality check, essentially, is what you're.
We're trying, right? When they allow us to enter certain spaces as well.
Yeah.
And sometimes if they close the door, we just, jump through the window and try to talk to them as well, because.
You jump through the window?
No, I mean.
Okay.
Proverbial.
Yeah, but in the way that, again, that is one way, We have different other as well methods, communicating, advocating. We're trying again, but it will be as well easier if we have like this inclusion and say, okay, let's work together, instead of being close in the barriers.
How do you continue the momentum that happens here at COP? I mean, I don't doubt that the two of you can continue that and carry it on when you go back home, but I mean, how does the coalition of youth who want to be a part of this continue?
So there's two answers to that.
Yeah.
The first answer to that is the COP is the convening of nation states to basically, the work happens all year around. This is where sorry for all of the analogies, you probably know this already, I'm just yapping away, but the COP is essentially a game, and this is where the scoreboard is revealed. So they've been working year in and year out, and this is where countries come together. The momentum needs to occur when party delegations go home, and they've now analyzed and spoken, and then they need to meet their agenda year after year. If we keep extending the deadline on the homework that is due, I mean, if the climate crisis was a homework assignment, we would all be failed and left behind in our schools. We have big fat F on the report card because you can't meet your paper deadlines. You're not executing. So countries, parties, and the global delegations really need to fulfill their homework. Momentum for civil society. I think that's a rather unfortunate, I have a rather unfortunate answer to that. The momentum exists fundamentally because the climate crisis is getting worse. In so many parts of the world, like my colleague Joice was mentioning, there's fires, there's floods, there's typhoons, hurricanes, disasters. One needs to mobilize, and the momentum occurs, unfortunately, because of the constant threat to life. And I wonder how long, like, what threshold do we need to reach? How much disaster needs to occur, like, until we really change the way that we are addressing this climate crisis? And that's an open question.
Joice, do you want to close us out?
Yeah, of course. I think in the way, again, I think for us, like action, it translates like trying to mitigate, like what's happening locally. Again, high temperatures, weather crisis, a lot of things at the same time. So obviously, like we are trying and push, like these agendas. And I think, again, we have seen as well, not just representation, but as well engagement. And we have seen some delegations as well, including young people. And it will be amazing if other, delegations can also include young people, not just because it's a checklist, right? Like, oh, youth watching or tokenism, but because we really have a different way of acting. I believe youth, we are catalyst of actions, like in chemistry, catalyst is like a substance that allows you to have a reaction faster. We do, because it's like, we know this is our life and this is urgent, so we work in very innovative ways. And I think the question that I also want to leave the audience, and the question that motivates, and I've been talking with a negotiator, is like, how do you want to be remembered? Like, how are you going to be a good ancestor? You. how are you going to be a good ancestor? And this is the moment we're showing it.
All right, we have to leave it there. Joice, Ayisha, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.